Every day, somewhere over Eastern Europe, a $400 drone hunts a $5 million tank. It's small, cheap, and effective enough to rewrite modern warfare. But the strange part is, the world's most powerful military is now learning from modified hobby drones held together with innovation and necessity. So how did a nation fighting for survival outpace decades of defense technology? And what does that mean for how we think about war? Let's start with when everything changed. February 2022, Russia invades Ukraine with overwhelming force. More tanks, aircrafts, missiles. On paper, it should have been over quickly. Ukraine's military was smaller, their air force outnumbered, their resources stretched impossibly thin. But something unexpected happened. Instead of collapsing, Ukraine adapted, and their secret weapon wasn't advanced fighter jets or billion-dollar missile systems. It was lots and lots of drones. Not the multi-million-dollar predators the US deploys. We're talking about commercial quadcopters you could order online, DJI drones designed for wedding photography, racing drones built by hobbyists in their garages, even modified jet skis turned into kamikaze boats. Ukraine took what was available and turned it into a weapon system that confused, frustrated, and ultimately changed the rules of modern combat. Okay, now it gets interesting. While American defense contractors spent years perfecting $30 million drones, Ukrainian engineers strapped explosives to $500 racing drones and deployed them within weeks. One system represented decades of aerospace engineering and procurement bureaucracy. The other represented pure necessity. And necessity, it turns out, doesn't wait for approval. That's not an accident. That's adaptation at survival speed. Speaking of adaptation, if you hit that subscribe button right now, you're basically choosing to stay ahead of the curve. Because what we're about to cover next, it changes everything. There's a concept in military strategy called imposition. Make your enemy spend more to defend than you spend to attack. For decades, this worked in reverse for America. We built expensive weapons. Adversaries scrambled to counter them. We outspent everyone, and that was the strategy. Ukraine flipped that equation entirely. Just visualize it. A small reconnaissance drone costs about $800 to spot a Russian artillery position. That artillery piece costs maybe $2 million. The drone operator calls in an FPV attack drone, another $500, which kamikaze dives into the target and destroys it. The total cost to Ukraine, $1,300. Cost to Russia, $2 million, plus the crew, plus the strategic loss of firepower. That's not just efficient warfare, that's revolutionary economics. But here's what makes it even more devastating. When you're launching hundreds of these drones, the enemy can't shoot them all down. Russian air defenses might fire interceptor missiles costing $500,000 each. Is it firing that at a $400 drone? Economically insane. But if they don't fire, then the drones get through. It's a lose-lose situation, and Ukraine created it with modified hobby equipment. The American military, meanwhile, remains optimized for exquisite platforms. Fewer, better, more expensive, which works perfectly in peacetime. But when combat starts and you lose a $50 million drone, you don't just lose hardware, you lose political will, risk tolerance, and the ability to experiment boldly. Did Ukraine lose a drone? Nah, that's okay, they'll just print another one next week. The threshold for targeting collapsed. Suddenly, everything became a target because everything could be targeted affordably. That changes battlefield calculus completely. And here's where the story gets stranger. When Ukraine needed more drones, they didn't call Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman. Instead, they called everyone. Small tech firms, university engineering departments, literally hobbyists building FPV racing drones in their garage. A Ukrainian nonprofit called Eskadron started producing Pegasus attack drones for under $500 each. Not in some secure defense facility with classified clearances, but with whatever commercial materials they could source. Another group developed the Sting Interceptor drone specifically to shoot down Iranian-designed kamikaze drones threatening their cities. They iterated, tested, and deployed in a fraction of the time a traditional defense program requires. This wasn't some feel-good underdog story where passion beats planning. This was Ukraine recognizing a fundamental truth about modern manufacturing. Consumer electronics supply chains are fast, distributed, and cheap. If you design around commercial parts, the same chips, motors, and cameras that go into consumer products, you can scale production overnight. You're not waiting for a specialized defense contractor to spin up a single production line with custom components. You're tapping into global manufacturing ecosystems already producing millions of units monthly. The US defense industrial base operates on the opposite model: highly specialized, security-cleared facilities producing small quantities of custom hardware, which is perfect for stealth bombers and nuclear submarines. But for drones you might lose by the dozen every single day, it's completely backwards. Ukraine proved that in modern conflict, your industrial base isn't just defense contractors operating in secure facilities. It's everyone with a 3D printer and a soldering iron. It's the civilian tech sector that can pivot to wartime production in weeks, not years. That distributed, flexible manufacturing capacity became a strategic advantage Russia couldn't counter. Now imagine you're a Ukrainian artillery unit on the front lines early 2022. Traditionally, if you wanted to call in a strike, you spot a target, radio up the chain of command, wait for approval, wait for the coordinates to be calculated, wait for someone higher up to authorize the fire mission. By the time shells landed, your target had often moved. Now picture this instead. Your squad has its own quadcopter. You launch it from your position, spot a Russian artillery piece within minutes, and immediately vector an FPV attack drone operated by your own unit, or call in artillery strikes that your own spotter drone is correcting in real time, adjusting based on live video feed. The entire kill chain, detection, decision, strike, it happens in minutes, sometimes seconds at the lowest tactical level. That's not just faster, that's a completely different philosophy of warfare. The US military calls this sensor-to-shooter integration, and we've invested billions developing it over decades, but it usually means linking satellites to command centers to bomber wing massive systems, talking to other massive systems through layers of hierarchy. Ukraine achieved it with squad-level drones and handheld tablets running battlefield management software called Delta. They pushed the decision-making authority down to the soldiers who could actually see the battlefield, not up to commanders viewing PowerPoint presentations in air-conditioned operation centers. And it worked because Ukrainian commanders made a fundamental choice: trust your soldiers. Give them tools, then let them experiment and adapt. Except that some decisions will be wrong. But battlefield speed matters more than bureaucratic perfection. That's a cultural shift, not a technological one. And it's infinitely harder to adopt than simply buying better equipment. Here's a detail that sounds small but matters enormously. Ukrainian drone operators are often trained in weeks, not years. Some are former gamers who grew up on flight simulators. Some are civilians who picked up the skill after the invasion. They learned by flying real missions, losing real drones, iterating under actual combat conditions. By contrast, a US Air Force drone pilot goes through months or years of training, certification, evaluation. There are procedures, checklists, standardized protocols for every scenario, which is genuinely important when you're flying a $30 million Reaper over populated areas. You can't afford mistakes or collateral damage incidents, but it also means that you can't scale quickly. You can't hold a motivated teenager a controller and say, figure it out through practice. Ukraine could. Not because they're reckless with human life, but because their drones were cheap enough that learning through failure became acceptable. How can someone crash 500 FPV drones while learning flight patterns? That's $2,500 spent on training, which is roughly the same as a single advanced flight simulator session in the US military. This created a powerful feedback loop. More operators meant more tactical innovation. More innovation meant better battlefield tactics. Better tactics meant more mission success. More success meant increased funding and attention, all happening at a pace the traditional defense world simply couldn't match. The US trains for precision and perfection, but Ukraine trained for speed and volume. Both approaches have genuine value, but in a war where your enemy adapts daily and battlefield conditions shift hourly, speed wins the immediate fight. Now here's where policy collides with reality. Normally, buying military equipment in America involves years of requirements, documents, competitive bidding processes, extensive testing protocols, evaluation phases, contracting rules that are meticulously designed to prevent waste and corruption. It's methodical, it's careful, it's transparent. It's also painfully slow. Ukraine couldn't afford the slow. Their timeline was measured in weeks, not procurement cycles. So they did something radical. They created a parallel procurement system specifically for unmanned systems, separate budget allocation, dramatically simplified acquisition rules. They aligned purchasing with commercial product development cycles. If a company could build it and prove it worked in 6 months, they would receive a contract. No 5-year development programs, no death by PowerPoint reviews. Just demonstrate it works on the battlefield and we'll order 1,000 units. That wasn't chaos or corruption. It was a discipline of a different kind. ruthlessly focused on outcomes rather than process compliance. The question wasn't, did you follow proper procedure? It was, does this equipment help us survive and win? The US actually has mechanisms for this other transaction authority agreements, rapid acquisition programs, and emergency procurement channels, but they're exceptions to the normal process, not the default mode. And culturally, the defense establishment still defaults to the traditional model: slow, careful, risk-averse, covering all bureaucratic bases. Which makes perfect sense when you're spending taxpayer dollars on billion-dollar programs that will serve for decades. But when the threat evolves faster than your procurement cycle can respond, carefulness becomes dangerous. Ukraine proved that you can move with incredible speed without being fiscally reckless. You just have to choose velocity as a core value, not merely a compromise you reluctantly accept. There's something deeper happening here, something that transcends tactics or technology specifications. Ukraine's drone revolution succeeded because an entire society mobilized around it. It wasn't just the military using drones, civilians were modifying them, donating them, and crowdfunding procurement. Engineers volunteered their expertise. Hobbyists became improvised weapon designers. The line between military innovation and civilian contribution blurred until it essentially disappeared. That's not a strategy you can simply copy and paste in a peacetime doctrine. It emerged from existential necessity. When your country's continued existence hangs in the balance, bureaucratic boundaries and institutional silos matter far less than collective survival. But it reveals something uncomfortable for America to consider. We've professionalized warfare to the point where it's become disconnected from broader society. Defense is something done by contractors and career military personnel, not something the wider tech industry or civilian engineering world engages with directly, which has genuine advantages. Less militarization of civilian society, clear democratic civilian-military boundaries, or professional expertise. But it also means slower innovation cycles, less talent flow between sectors, less creative chaos, fewer fresh perspectives challenging established thinking. Ukraine demonstrates what becomes possible when those boundaries become temporarily porous. Not permanently, no society wants permanent war footing, but enough to tap into the innovation and agility that exists outside traditional defense channels. The question isn't whether America should copy Ukraine's desperate model. The question is whether we can afford not to have that latent capability available when we eventually need it. So where does this evolution lead? Because drone warfare isn't static, it's advancing faster than almost any military technology in modern history. Ukraine is already experimenting with coordinated drone swarms of groups of platforms attacking simultaneously from multiple vectors, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and tactical coordination. They're testing autonomous navigation systems that function even when GPS signals are jammed or spoofed. They're developing counter-drone platforms specifically designed to hunt and destroy enemy unmanned systems. They're building AI-enabled targeting systems that can identify and track targets faster than human operators. Meanwhile, Russia adapts in parallel, matched drone attacks designed to saturate Ukrainian air defenses, sophisticated electronic warfare systems specifically targeting drone control frequencies, their own swarm tactics and counter-innovations. This is an arms race unfolding in real time, iterating in weeks and months instead of years and decades. And what about America? Well, we're watching carefully, learning methodically, but also moving more slowly. We're testing autonomous systems in controlled environments. We're experimenting with swarms following proper safety protocols. We're developing next-generation drones on traditional acquisition timelines. That's not entirely bad. The US possesses advantages Ukraine doesn't: massive budgets, cutting-edge technology, global reach, sophisticated intelligence infrastructure, established logistical networks. But we also carry institutional inertia. And in a domain where adaptation speed might matter more than raw capability specifications, inertia becomes genuinely dangerous. The lesson isn't that America should abandon carefully long-term planning or rigorous testing. It's that we need both capabilities simultaneously: the capacity for patient long-term development of advanced systems and the capacity for rapid iteration of cheap attributable platforms. Not one or the other, both. Every day, that $400 drone still hunts tanks, but it's not about technology. It's about speed over perfection, adaptation over capability. Ukraine succeeded through faster thinking, not better equipment, because capability without adaptability is just potential, and potential without speed is just planning. If this changes how you see modern warfare, subscribe. Thanks for watching.